The video that I took had technical problems, and your son is helping me with that by boosting the audio so people can actually hear it without having to pipe it through a stereo system. But one of the,
You
first...
you will have some issues with the sound. The video we posted last week from the previous meeting, if you've watched it, it's on Granite Rock on our YouTube channel. The video from our podcast last week is up there too. You are certainly encouraged to go find us on YouTube. There's tons of stuff there that doesn't always make it onto the page because it's not relevant to a blog topic or whatever. But when it is, we try to pull it in so you can use it. But you can go there and check it out. Sometimes the audio is a little goofy. Sometimes it's not. We're still working on that. We swear we are, and we're going to solve that problem. But for now, this may be the only way you get to see it. And we apologize if it's not the most pleasant experience. But again, sometimes you just have, it's like that shaky cam video. Some people love it. I can't stand shaky video like that. They're doing on movies and stuff. It makes me seasick. It's crazy.
Yeah.
But again, just, if you're not sure what we're talking about, just listen to some of these people and you'll be like,
And you will be listening to them later on, especially the first one was the most offensive as far as I'm concerned, because it hit the trifecta of being the progressive, the trans, and the indoctrination of third and fourth graders. Without getting into the details, this guy, Jake Maxwell from Guilford, was reading letters from another district from third and fourth graders who were very sorry from all the hate that they were receiving for their family. And I'm thinking, yeah, this is the typical thing. I was called a hate blogger by him simply because we don't agree. And that's part of the left's modus operandi. If you do not agree with them, you are instantly hateful. But to me, and you'll listen to some of these letters once we put up the video, I was just astonished because third and fourth graders normally don't think about this stuff. It's the last thing in their mind. And I'm convinced that public schools are indoctrination centers because
that
that's
and climate
the only
change.
way.
Yeah, they're not thinking about any of that stuff. They're thinking about, they're thinking about being kids. And these adults are screwing with their heads. They are poisoning their minds. They're literally ruining their childhood for political purposes.
Yeah, the ability of children to have innocence in their lives is now past. Again, the political is personal, the personal is political. They're robbing these children. I don't care what the topic is, trans or climate change or normal speech, history, you name the topic, it's abysmal. Leave the kids out of it. I don't care, and I say this about people on the right who bring kids to hold signs on the right side of things rather than the left. Keep the kids at home. Get a babysitter. Politics should be adults, but this is what happens when people say, hey, it's okay to make my kid a pawn in this whole thing. But anyways, so I think I've just driven that right into the ground.
Yeah. Okay, whoops. Sorry, somebody's home. Hey. My dog's barking, and I muted myself so that you wouldn't have to listen to the dog barking, but you did anyway. Yeah, so while we're talking about schools and things like that, we had an incident that we reported this week on at least 2 occasions regarding a student in a Nashua middle school who was severely beaten. And the only reason we know about that is because one of the 2 girls in the school who was involved in this, and both of these girls ended up beating on the same girl within a number of days of each other and recorded it, is because the father of the daughter of the girl who got beat up got a hold of the video and posted it publicly. And he posted it publicly with a timeline because he was very dissatisfied with the service he was receiving with regard to his daughter's treatment from the administration in the school. This is the Nashville schools. As you know, we have some history with them and their superintendent, Jamal Mosley. And so the video that he shared was shot on 9/27. So September 27th, his daughter was attacked. Apparently she had been threatened the day before. So she's attacked on 9/27. And if you look at the video, go to GrokTALK.com, search Fairgrounds Middle School, Nashua, and you will see this, just the way this girl was treated. And so she was attacked. So the father has a meeting with the vice principal, Jeffrey Arbogast, who said he would deal with it. He also had a meeting with the Nashua police, who said there was nothing they could do. And so now that's really, I mean, now go look at the video. If an adult had done that, they would be in jail, okay? This girl walks up behind her in a line, grabs her by the hair, drags her to the ground, and proceeds to punch her in the face for several seconds before some staff member comes over and manages to separate them. This was not just somebody touched my arm and I didn't want that kind of assault. This was a physical beating of a 12-year-old in a public school. So the father's obviously frustrated. His daughter is being threatened every single day. On 10/4, there were more threats. She had to be dismissed from school for her safety. That was the big solution, apparently. So then on 10/7, his daughter's attacked again. So the father's had it. He posts the video on Facebook. It goes viral. It's everywhere. We posted it. It became the #1 post on GrokTALK for that day and for several days since. And so it's become this big story. And the first thing that the superintendent says in his letter is that he doesn't want people recording fights at school. Why doesn't he want people recording fights at school? Because then they become public and everybody realizes that his school system is doing things that are causing children to get beat up without consequence. Because apparently there's an unofficial rule that has not been approved by the Nashua School Board that says that they're not going to expel children from the school system.
Ooh.
So I wrote my follow-up a few days later. If you haven't read the book about, I can't remember the name of it now, Meadow, who died in Parkland, her father wrote a book, How Meadow Died, or something like that. I'm still reading it. He goes into great detail about all the public documents that are available about Nicholas Cruz, who was an insanely disturbed child, young adult, and teenager. There is no way that that young man should have been anywhere but in juvie jail or some prison somewhere. It was so disturbed, and they just pushed him along and pushed him along and pushed him along and kind of dealt with it and just sort of, he obviously was disciplined in one form or another, but nothing that ever kept him from having access to firearms. He was never really jailed or imprisoned. He didn't have felony convictions for some of the things he did. So, they have.
And wasn't he also that government, quote unquote, touched him or his case over 30 times and nothing ever happened?
Something like 32 different times the government was involved with him on a criminal basis, and he was still able to obtain a firearm legally. And so, the system, anyway, Broward County had gotten involved in the Promise program. There had been a Dear Colleague letter from the Obama administration, which we all know about, that had said, hey, you've got these minority kids. We want you to kind of soft sell the whole discipline thing, try to get them into therapy or talk to them or whatever. Anyway, none of that stuff happened. The soft selling did. They didn't do anything to him as far as discipline goes, but there was no real therapy. There was no real help. He was even asking for help and they weren't helping him. So this isn't that. I'm not saying this is that, but this is the beginning of that, because it starts when you take behavior like this and you say, you know what, we're not going to expel students. We're going to work with students. Well, it's great you want to work with students, but when somebody comes up and they beat the crap out of another student, you get them the hell out of the building and you keep them the hell out of the building until you've helped them and you've got some professional has determined that they can be in a building with other children and not punch them in the head. But that's not what it was. This is Jamal Mosley's Nashua School District, and the school board knew nothing about his expulsion policy, which of course is still a rumor. There's no official documentation to say that the policy is in place, but I have heard from at least 2 different teachers through third parties that say you can't get kids expelled from the Nashua School District unless they literally commit some kind of serious felony. So this is a developing story.
Sounds like a right-to-know request should be on its way shortly.
Yeah, well, as it turns out, the school board didn't know. The school board will respond in some form or another. but I'm not sure how, because this feels a lot like Timberlane, where the superintendent really kind of runs the show and the school board's just sort of there for show. Kind of has that, from the right to knows and everything else we've done. There are people on that school board who aren't like that, but they don't have a majority, so they're kind of, they can make public statements, and they have, but they're not in power, and they can't make change, and they certainly can't hold Mosley responsible. But there's something going on. There was an administration change at another school, another middle school in Nashua. Principal and vice principal were replaced. I did hear that one of the students who committed the assault was in another school and had discipline problems, so they moved them to Fairgrounds Middle School where this girl was attacked. There's always, you're right to be suspicious. It's not like a conspiracy, but if you understand bureaucracies and if you pay any attention to them, and you've done this as long as we have, you begin to realize things like with the IRS scandal. Nobody got punished for that. Those people literally used the power of the government to intimidate and suppress political speech to prevent them from participating in the electoral process. Nobody got punished for that. Anybody who did any wrongdoing was shuffled off to another department, moved to another building, let's say another school, just as an example. No real punishment. They probably didn't lose any pay. If they were off work at all, it was probably administrative pay, so they got paid leave, like they got a vacation on our dime for the trouble. Lois Lerner became a hero of the left. I'm surprised they didn't give her a parade. And she could sunset it herself off into the distance, and now she's become a historical bullet point on a story that people insist is still just made up by right-wing loons. And that's how it's done. That's why they call you a hater when you talk about things you believe in at school board meetings. That's why they call you a Nazi and a racist, because they're hoping that in enough time, that enough people will have said it, that it'll stick. And history will remember those of us who stood up for liberty and freedom as supremacists and haters, when in fact we were fighting against hate and supremacy. So the Nashua thing, again, is I'm still waiting for more information to come in. I have feelers out. I'm just trying to dig in. Nobody really wants to admit a heck of a lot. They certainly don't want to do it on the record. But I won't actually add to that story until I have multiple sources who can confirm, at least in a rumor, that something's going on, or maybe somebody goes public with something and we find out something about it. But it's not a good situation. I'm pretty sure Mosley's behind it all. And that's a slightly biased based on our last encounter with him with regard to the district in Granite Rock being blocked from all their servers for no reason other than the fact that they just didn't want anybody to read what we had to say. So it's a big story. It's definitely got national attention. Not so much national news attention, but a lot of people have seen it and they are aware of it. And lucky for us, when you search it, we rank real high. So that's good.
There was a comment left on your post from a family from South Africa of this lady who had brought their 3-year-old and 8-year-old. They happened to be in the Nashua area, and the mother was just aghast at how those kids, after being let out of school, not those involved in the fight, but just the kids in general at the end of the day, how they were behaving, that, they were swearing, their behavior and all of that. And it just happened to come across my screen as an email notification. So I quickly went there and I said, I'm sorry. It isn't always the school system. Sometimes parents here in the U.S. just refuse to grow their little barbarians up to be responsible citizens. And I really mean that, because we both have silver in our hair. We know that parenting, to get your children so that they don't think of it as adulting, the newest stupid word in the progressive vocabulary, it's a big deal, because the kids aren't civilized. Just because you belong to the USA doesn't mean you're going to be a civilized U.S. citizen. Parents are necessary. And I'll say it, a mom and a dad. Mom's going to be the nurturing and dad's going to be the playful but disciplinarian. Kids have got to learn how to behave to societal norms. The problem is too many parents aren't doing that. They'll do the blame school first rather than blame themselves first. And it also goes back to the progressives that have almost successfully, in what I used to call the wall of society, where they keep pulling the bricks out here, here, and here, and then they wonder why the wall's teetering. Well, actually, they don't wonder. For them, that's an achievable goal, because if it falls down, they have something that they want to put into place whereby they become the new aristocracy of the monarchy, even though they may call it communism, democrat socialism, something else. The whole idea is that, well, we'll just replace those who are in charge with ourselves. But anyways.
Well, it is. It's the whole division thing. The racism divides us, and they insert government in the spaces they create. The gender issue divides us, and they create government and stuff it in the spaces in between. And they just keep packing it in until there really isn't anything else left but the government. And then that's when the people who they said they were protecting discover that it was just a trick.
Yeah, and by then it'll be too late. And then we have to do this all over again.
GrokTV.